This is the Literary Licensed Podcast, coming at you from Collinsport, Maine, discussing strange goings-on in the world of the Collins family, with your hosts, Tom Damon, Vickie Ray, and Keith Chorgo, bring you daytime drama fear from the past into your present.
Yes, I'm here. What do you want me to do? I can't see the slate. Dark Shadows, number 1. VTR 613, air date 6/27/66. Take 3.
My name is Victoria Winters. My journey is beginning. A journey that I hope will open the doors of life to me and link my past with my future. A journey that will bring me to a strange and dark place, to the edge of the sea, high atop Widow's Hill, a house called Collinwood, a world I've never known, with people I've never met. People who tonight are still only shadows in my mind, but who will soon fill the days and nights of my tomorrows.
Heart, don't fail me now. Courage, don't desert me. Don't turn back now that we're here. People always say life is full of choices. No one ever mentions fear or how the world can seem so vast on a journey to the past. Somewhere down this road, I know someone's waiting. Years of dreams just can't be wrong. Arms will open wide. I'll be safe and wanted. Finally home where I belong. Well, starting now, I'm learning fast on this journey to the past. Home, love, family. There was once a time I must have had them too. Home, love, family. I will never be complete until I find you. One step at a time, one hope then another. Who knows where this road may go? Back to who I was, on to find my future. Things my heart still needs to know. Yes, let this be a sign. Let this road be mine. Let it lead me to my past and bring me home at
How much do you really know about this?
I don't understand.
Well, I don't know anything about myself. All I know is the name on a slip of paper that was pinned to a cardboard box, and the foundling home where that box was left. It's not much of a past, is it, Mrs. Stoddard?
I suppose not.
Her name is Victoria. I cannot take care of her. That's what the note said. And someone left it there, Mrs. Stoddard, and someone also sent $50 every month to help pay for my care.
I see. Do you know who it was?
No. All I know is that the money started coming just about 18 years ago.
Why are you telling me all this, Miss Winters?
I suppose because so much seems to have happened here. Just 18 years ago. Just 18 years ago.
Hello, welcome to Literary License Podcast, and today we'll be starting our first episode in the series that we're calling Dark Shadows, where we'll be covering each episode of the series from 1966 to 1971. And before we get started, this is going to, if you're a regular listener to the Literary License Podcast, this is kind of something going to be a bit different. So basically, what I suggest is going to kind of be like a guide. So we're going to be like unpacking these episodes and viewing it like we did for the very first time. So just let you know, there will be spoilers involved in these episodes. And we're also bringing out an invitation to anyone who would like to guest co-host, because there's a lot of Dark Shadows fans out there and would like to join us for an episode. Please make sure that you email us on info@llpodcast.com, and we can have a discussion about this and see if you want to come on as a special guest co-host. So before we get started, let's find out who's with us today. So we have our regular new co-host, Tom Diamond. Say hello, Tom.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be with you, and it's great to be with the kickoff here for the first 25 episodes of Dark Shadows. We know you're going to love it.
And, of course, we also have our regular co-host, who you've known for many, many, many years, because she's old, and that's Vickie Ray. Hello, Vickie.
It's on, Keith.
Hello, Vickie. How are you, Vickie? Oh, goodness gracious.
And we also have a special co-host today. Her name is Theresa Chase. She's a writer and a director and a producer. Hello, Theresa.
Hello. I have directed. I just suck at it, so I just consider myself a writer, producer, and editor. Yeah, you have to admit your limitations.
So before we get started, we like to sit there and give a little glimpse into each of our lives and find out what each of us have been up to. So, Theresa, what have you been up to?
5 foot. But professionally, I am producing several projects, including a paranormal thriller called Never Can Say Goodbye that takes the ghostly genre to a place it's never gone before. I've got a veteran TV series, but I'm also producing a new movie called Chalice Island. It started off as Dark Shadows, but I wasn't able to attain the rights. So I have edited out the Dark Shadows, and it's now called Chalice Island.
Ooh, excellent.
Very cool.
And just to let our podcast listeners know that make sure you subscribe to our newsletter at www.llpodcast.com. And you can make sure that you hear all the news what Theresa Chase is. And you can also be following her, but we'll give you her links at the end of the show. So, Tom, what have you been up to?
Well, my voiceover business is I'm dabbling as usual, and and I had the very great honor, by the way, of interviewing Chris Pennock for you guys, and that's going to be later. That's going to be shown later on as we proceed. I just came back from New York. A friend of mine retired after 38 years of service, so I got caught in the heat wave. And I am thankfully back in Florida, enjoying Florida's heat wave. So that's what I am.
And what about yourself, Vickie? What have you been up to?
Well, the usual. My grandson's a BMX racer. He's 6 years old, and he's ranked, I think he's on number 8 in his age group like right now. He doesn't know that's fantastic, but we are really proud of him. And I've been watching a lot of Shudder again lately because I miss our Shudder casts really bad. So I've been kind of binging on that and binging on the Dark Shadows, and just got home from New York, where I also struggled with the heat wave because people in upstate New York don't believe in air conditioning. That's you, Mom. And other than that, I actually visited. Well, I went to the lake a lot. Went to Second's Harbor. It's really quite beautiful still, even though they're having some problems with the overkill from the rain. Like Wessex Beach, there's no beach. There's water, but there's no beach. But not much. Other than that, talking to you good folks.
It was closed, so.
Yeah, it's really sad because I really wanted to go swimming. I love the lake.
Well, with myself, I've been continuing watching Animal Kingdom, which is on Amazon Prime. I suggest everyone watch it. Fantastic series with Ellen Birkin. It's been winning all the awards. Very good series. And Vickie turned me on to a film which I watched today called Girl with Balls.
You watched it. I told you you'd like it.
I was just looking at my notes, and when I heard that, I went, "Ah!"
Well, I started watching. I go, oh my god, I got to tell Keith about this because it's just right up his alley. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, it's really good. It's a Spanish film that's on Netflix at the moment, and it's kind of a comedy horror film. And there's some gore in it to help those people happy, and it's so off kilter that I quite enjoyed it. It was very good.
I figured you would.
And then I watched, what else did I see? Oh, and A Star Is Born with Brenda Walsh and Lady Gaga. Finally got
I
around.
watched that. I thought it was kind of good, but you know what? It really bothered me about was it Bradley Cooper? Is that who we played?
Yeah.
They made him look like a lush the whole movie, even though I know he directed it, but he really decimated his character completely because it wasn't even really like a slow downfall. He just started binge drinking from the beginning.
Well, to be honest, I think since the Judy Garland's version of it up through Barbara Streisand and this one, that character always starts off as like a drug addict. I mean, a drug or an alcoholic. And they kind of stay at that plateau until the final end of it.
I thought Lady Gaga was great in it, though.
So the thing is, it's kind of like, yeah, so you don't really see one rise and the other one fall. You kind of see the one just rise and fall and the other one just rises. So
I love Bradley Cooper.
It's really good. I mean, it really shows off her talent. I mean,
She's really so multifaceted. I mean, right down to singing opera to singing,
well, we know
bad
now.
romance.
Well, now we know why Madonna hates her guts. So.
Well, Madonna had her shot. Okay.
So I guess now what we'll do is we'll go into the actual Dark Shadows discussion in our now called Out of the Shadows portion of our podcast. Tom Diamond, why don't you give us some trivia about the episodes 1 through 25 of Dark Shadows?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say that Dark Shadows was originally called The House on Stormcliff. I don't know if a lot of you know about that. Art Wallace, who wrote the first 65 episodes of the show, has penned a writer's guide called Shadows on the Wall. Now, Shadows on the Wall is a very rare item now. I managed to grab a copy, but it'll sell for hundreds of dollars on YouTube.
What was that again? I did a flyby.
It's called Shadows on the Wall.
Shadows on the Wall. Okay.
And it was written by Art Wallace. Art Wallace, who wrote the first 65 episodes of Dark Shadows and worked very closely with Dan Curtis. And Art Wallace is also known, just incidentally, for the Star Trek fans, as the writer for the second season show Obsession, which has to do with Captain Kirk encountering a monster vampire on another planet. And his obsession with punishing the son of his former commander, who died, and it's just in Art Wallace's alley, because obsession was a theme of Dark Shadows, which you're going to see literally starting from the beginning. So it was a nice segue. But in terms of trivia, gee, there's so much. So let me just highlight some brief points.
Really?
Yeah, and one of which is Conrad Bain, the actor who went on to Different Strokes, is featured in the first episode as the hotel clerk, Mr. Wells. And he was on 3 episodes, actually, and then later came, but we'll talk about that later. But Conrad Bain was essentially the one of the first actors that really made good. The Blue Whale, which we're going to talk about as the bar, was originally called the Rainbow Bar. When Dark Shadows, when the House on Stormcliff was changed to Dark Shadows, Collinwood was originally called Colin's House. And if you fans out there pick up the Marilyn Ross Dark Shadows novels, which were penned in the 1960s, that was really Dan Ross, who wrote under the pen name of Marilyn Ross, you're going to see the second title. The second novel is called Strangers at Colin's House. And you're saying, well, what the heck is that? Because it's Collinwood. But at that point, they were still thinking of calling it Colin's House. And the main point that I want to bring out is the dream, the very famous dream that brought this all about. Dan Curtis, and of course it's well known to the fans, Dan Curtis had a dream, and he woke up in the middle of the night, and it concerned a girl in a train who was going to be a governess at a fancy house up in New England. This was the dream, essentially, and she's looking at a letter while she's sitting in the train. And what is this letter about? Well, we'll find out when we go into it in more detail. And then she gets off the train, and she's alone in the station waiting for whoever. And that's how the dream ends. And then he woke up, and the room was pitch black. It's a good thing he woke up, because I wonder if he had not woken up, whether he would have remembered the dream in the first place, and then we all wouldn't be here. But the point is, that's what led to his collaborating with Art Wallace. And Art Wallace decided to take a show that he had done in the late 1950s called The House, which can be seen on YouTube, I believe, and part of that was featured recently in the Dan Curtis Master of Dark Shadows DVD, and that concerned a woman who had not gotten out of her house for 20 years and had a daughter named Louise, and that daughter later became Carolyn on the show, which we're going to go into, and she had a boyfriend on the house named Joe, and you're going to see where Joe fits into Dark Shadows. So bloopers were unbelievable. Bloopers, I would say at least 6 to 7 bloopers per show, because they did not have a budget, and everything had to be shot once, if at all, because it cost them at least $200,000 if they had to do a retake back then. So you'll see all kinds of things with they're in the Blue Whale, and you see the Klieg lights on top as they're going by. You'll see mic booms dropping into the set, the shadow of the mic boom. You'll see a teleprompter in the mirror. You'll see a teleprompter being moved away. You'll see cameras going in and out.
I like when the curtains fell.
That's later. That's later.
I know.
We're not going to talk. That's later, but we'll get to that, Fred. We'll get to that. But yeah, there are all kinds of. You'll see blocking marks on the floor with taping, where when everybody's supposed to stand in a certain place, and they put tape marks so the actors can see where to go, and they take those off before the dress rehearsal. But in some cases, they were accidentally left, and you'll see that in the first 25 episodes. You'll see a couple of episodes where you see block marks on the floor. And my favorite one is a script. There's and we'll be talking about Sam Evans, the father of Maggie, one of the characters, and it's in their house, and he's a painter, and you'll see what looks like a book, but it really is a script on the table with the paints, and that script was left on the table for the entire show. And what had happened, and you only know this if you look at the slates, which were when they started the takes, they did these slates, and that's available on the DVD set. And the slate shows the actor, Mark Allen, who played Sam Evans, walking into the room while the slate is going on with the script. He gives it to a crewman, and the crewman leaves the script on the table, and nobody notices it. And that's one of my favorite ones, to see the script on the table during the whole show. So anyway, that'll give you some idea.
I liked it when they tried to open the doors at the beginning episodes, like the main door to the parlor, and Elizabeth Stoddard just like, trying to open the door.
Oh yeah. She was a friend of mine, said, "What's the matter? This is Joan Bennett, for God's sakes, the famous actress, and all she's doing here is opening doors." And
I read her history. She had quite a life, really.
Oh yes, she did. Oh absolutely. About one of the Bennett sisters throughout her career, great movies and stuff like that, and and she got into it because she was, it was past time already. She was no longer an ingenue. And
she was very beautiful, though.
Oh yes, still was very, very. And she had done some TV, and was kind of fiddling around with it. And the story is that her agent set it up with Dan Curtis, and he said, "Are you sure you want to do? You would be great for the show, but are you sure you want to do all this? Because it's a really horrendous schedule where you got to memorize the scripts, and it's a 5-day week." And it's and she said, "No, I want to try it," and that's how that happened.
And what about yourself, Theresa? Do you have anything about the making of, or any kind of interesting trivia about the first 25 episodes?
Oh, who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, the quiet one over there in the corner of the screen.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I really liked about the series is that it was, age and gender groundbreaking, because it had a wide range of ages, from David all the way up to older characters. And for as much as people can point out the bloopers these days, when we were originally watching it, the cast and the production values were the best for the time. But right, they didn't have a budget. So, but I like the fact that they brought in the age diversity, and that's something that's missing in the industry today. So. But also, I like to point out that David and Carolyn were really forerunners of and a product of the 60s, where children were being more dynamic and being more forthright. So it wasn't just that the children at home because it was scary. They could also see themselves in it. And that was really important.
Well,
I tell
although
everybody the same thing. My mom would not let me watch it.
My mother was addicted, so if I couldn't watch it, neither could she.
I got to watch The Young and the Restless and stuff like that, and there was so much sex and all that crap going on. I always ask my mother this day, I go, there's all this weird crap going on in Young and the Restless and like Bold and the Beautiful. It's like incest up the wall, all stuff in these soap operas, and she wouldn't let me watch Dark Shadows. With soaps, let's face it,
My mother got her friend addicted to it, and my mother was pretty snarky. So halfway through the show, she would call Leona. And just to because back then you had to answer the phone to find out who it was. And this good and proper church lady swore like a sailor every time and hung up because she interrupted her show.
That's true. We didn't have DVRs and all that stuff back. I mean, we had a color TV and we had 2 black and whites, so we were like styling,
Well, one thing about Dark Shadows, they didn't do really flashbacks. They remembered stuff that happened before the show started, but they never really did flashbacks.
And so these episodes,
you were just screwed.
Well, they did, but it was late. But it was later on, and that'll be and for hopefully all those fans, stay tuned, because you will in another podcast, as we continue to go into this, learn about the first flashback of Dark Shadows. But what I was going to respond to, Theresa, regarding David and Carolyn and them being reflective of the younger generation. Well, one thing that I don't think the younger generation did too often was patricide. And in the first 25 episodes, at least 5 weeks of that, or a good, is this whole plot line of David planning to trying to murder his father by taking the bleeder valve off of a car and and then Roger gets into an accident with it. Carolyn, as envisioned by Art Wallace, and this is very, very interesting because there are a lot of detailed character sketches in Shadows on the Wall, and that's for the writers, not necessarily for the viewer. And Carolyn he wanted Carolyn to be a free spirit, but he envisioned her as a mixture of freedom and fear, because yes, she was running around, in the Blue Whale, doing the jerk and the monkey and all that stuff, and
to the same music every episode.
Yeah.
The worst jukebox in history was at the Blue Whale.
Oh, yeah. If I had one, problem with it is that the music, was not the best and updated. I love the ghostly stuff, but the Blue Whale and the music in the Blue Whale could have been better.
Yeah. I was talking to my mother about that, and she goes, no. She goes, well, she used to listen to Herb Alpert, and stuff like that. But I mean, they could have thrown a little Herb in there, I guess.
Well, I think the slow dance, da 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 da, that's called number 1 at the Blue Whale. And that's in the first Dark Shadows LP, by the way. Was kind of nice, and it was slow, and it was cute. But that da 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 da.
Oh, I hated that. I hated it. Da 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 da.
Jesus, stop. Get a hold of yourself, man.
It's like yes, I'm trying not to get out of my chair. That's my voiceover stuff. But I do want to quote that Art Wallace quotes Carolyn as, quote, an attractive, vivacious young girl who enjoys every moment of life. But deep within, she is fearful of what life can do. So she is propelled by 2 twin paths, freedom and fear. And you're gonna see that in the first 25 episodes. There's this freedom, but it's paralleled by Liz, the mother who really tries to control her. Carolyn in the first 25 episodes actually is going out with Joe Haskell, played by Joe Crothers. And a lot of fans who have not watched the early episodes don't realize this, because later on, Joe is associated with Maggie Evans. But yes, he was going out with Carolyn at the time, and Joe was in love with her. But Carolyn didn't, was scared of getting, and he was proposing marriage, but Carolyn was scared of that. And part of that was because the mother really wanted, she was going to give Joe a $25 a week raise. That's in the first 25 episodes. And
prostituting your daughter out. Yeah, take my daughter. I'll give you 25 quid extra.
That's great. Take him, please.
You buy a lot of dresses with that.
That's right. That's for sure. And she's saying, "Gee, do I really want to be stuck like this?" She liked him, but they really were not a match for each other. And then, Carolyn had this rebellious attitude. She wants to experience life, and she wants to get away from the mother, who basically wants her to. The mother wouldn't send her to college. She's going to sit in Collinwood to be what the heck is she going to do with her life? So that was that was what propelled Carolyn, the Carolyn character, to just try and rebel. When
I said that she was rebellious and free spirit, whenever she was told not to spend time with Burke, she ignored him. And when Roger tried to bully her into doing what he wanted, she ignored him, and she went out with Burke anyway.
That was one of the things, yes. Burke, to her, now this is a 17-year-old girl going out with a 32-year-old guy. Now there's another insertion. And how did the censors get away with that?
But he got money, okay.
And Burke was also money. Burke's history, played by Mitchell Ryan, who did a great job. Burke's history was someone who had grown up around the Collinwood mansion and so forth. And actually, there's a backstory that Art Wallace told us about in his book, which was not explored in the show, where he would hang around. Well, he did say that he would hang around Collinwood and stuff when he was 10 years old. And that's how he really got to know Carolyn. I think it was Burke's old man died on a ship that worked for the Collinwood family. So there was that kind of thing. But Burke was Burke was Carolyn's contretemps to Joe. Joe was this nice guy, poor but honest. Burke was this rich older guy with a way of the world.
Dashing, handsome, bad boy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he
Before we go into too much more of the episodes, anything more about any behind the scenes stuff before we actually get into the actual episodes themselves?
I don't know. I think we already almost covered it. We just got to rambling on there.
Well, what I want to discuss basically, there's one person who makes an appearance in this, and I am so sorry they didn't use her more. And she's the founder she runs the foundling home that Victoria comes from, and it's Elizabeth Wilson. Elizabeth Wilson is a multi-talented, multi-Tony Award winner.
Mrs. Hopewell was the character.
But one of our, what our audience probably know her most from is the movie 9 to 5. She played Roz, the one who they sent.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. I didn't even put that together.
And she's done stuff on, Broadway from The Color Purple. She's originated a couple original characters in Tennessee Williams and things like that from Tennessee Williams plays. So, yeah. So I just had to mention her because when I saw her on there, I was like, oh my God, it's Elizabeth Wilson.
Yes, fans. Keith is definitely your go-to man for anything little Trivial Pursuit stuff like that. He knows, I don't know where he pulls this stuff out of, but he always amazes me when he does it.
Well, some other trivia is that the rehearsals were held in the terrace room of the Empire Hotel on 63rd and Broadway. That was, before the show started around April, I believe, of 1966. And that was recently the site of the April 2019 event where the Dan Curtis new DVD was shown. Location footage, which is a very, very important point, that Dark Shadows was one of the first, or the first soap opera that actually went on location to shoot Collinwood at Seaview Terrace in Newport, Rhode Island. And the location footage for the first episode was shot 2 days before, on June 11th, 1966, which was a Saturday, and that was 2 days before the actual taping started. The Collinsport train station was a train station in Scarborough, New York. The Collinsport Inn with the hotel was the Essex, Connecticut Griswold Inn. And the Blue Whale, which we start to see, was the Black Pearl restaurant in Newport, Rhode Island, which fans still go to. So that was a very the stables were shot in Tarrytown. The stables at I know
what you're talking about.
The Lyndhurst Estate. Well, you see the stables in the first 25 episodes where Matthew Morgan resides, and that's shot. And that was part of the Lyndhurst Estate in Tarrytown, New York, where the House of Dark Shadows movie was filmed a few years later. So this is very important that the film was actually used in conjunction with a soap opera, which gave it an added dimension.
Yes, I agree with that.
So what we're going to do is we're going to cut to a commercial from our sponsors, Amazon and the WWF. Make sure you support those animals, and we'll be back with you after a word from our sponsor.
Amazon. Oops, wrong Amazon. Although we both contain an array of diversity, the rainforest with all of its animals and us with all of our products, come check us over today and find all the products you need quickly and efficiently. And buy it with one click. And now you can even use us to donate to your favorite charities using Amazon Smile. Amazon Smile is worth your while. Come check us out today.
We are one planet. We share one extraordinary home. We are millions of wonders, but we are all one world. If we only get one chance to save our planet, to protect it for the next generation, then we have to take it. This is our chance. This is our fight. For our planet, for our home, for all of us. Join WWF today.
Hello, welcome back to Literary License Podcast, and we'll be discussing the first 25 episodes of Dark Shadows. So, Vickie, do you want us to give a brief synopsis of these first 25 episodes?
I'm going to try. Victoria Winters arrives at the train station in Collinsport, where she's coming to Collinwood as the governess to 10-year-old David Collins, who's a deeply troubled young boy whose father, Roger, is also troubled by his own demons. Elizabeth Stoddard and her daughter Carolyn provide relationships, nurturing ones, although Carolyn quickly becomes envious of Victoria's relationship with the dashing Burke Devlin. and at the expense of Joe Haskell. Elizabeth Stoddard has not left the mansion in 18 years, is protected by 2 loyal men caretakers, who is Matthew Morgan and the manager of her business, Bill Malloy. Sam Evans, who's also a widower and an alcoholic artist, is a friend of the Collins family and shares a dark secret with Roger. And this brings in where he lives with Maggie, who is a waitress at the Collinsport Inn Diner. That is my story, and that's what I'm sticking to.
So, in our special shedding some light on the situation, hi, Tracy. How do you like to start our discussions of the actual episodes?
Well, I like Elizabeth. She is not the typical matriarch of the family. She actually controls the house. She controls the business, and Roger answers to her, which is why she is able to hire Vickie as a governess, and he really doesn't have anything to say about it. His first option is to ship David off, which is why David screws with his car and causes the accident.
Right.
And who in our life hasn't at some point fantasized doing something like that to their parents?
Well, I fantasize when you actually do it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is television and it's fantasy. And so David, gave a lot of children the permission to fantasize and not do it. But in the late 60s, there was that big rift between the adults and the children, where the season of love and the whole changing in society, David gave them permission to really, take control of their own lives and make their own decisions.
I mean, what's quite interesting in 1966, a couple of years prior to that, we had the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And then, as you were saying, America started going through a shift. Civil rights is just on the border, about to take off at this point. Women liberation is just about to take off at this point. And so it is very interesting what you said about Elizabeth Stoddard is actually runs the businesses, and she runs the household. At the same point where I'm assuming older brother, or I'm not quite sure, but I always comes across as like the older brother for some reason. But even to the expense of that, she's got more say than he does, which in a type of family that the Collins family is, you would think that everything would have gone to the son, because that's what normally would happen in this kind of circumstances.
I don't think Roger, I love Roger's character, by the way. I just totally adore his character. But I don't think he had his shit straight enough. And I think that she felt that she had to take the reins, which is really empowering for women back then to portray a woman in such a strong position, in the mid-60s. So I really enjoyed that about how things were written.
Well, actually, I'm going to interject and say that Roger is actually established as Liz's younger brother.
Okay.
Later on in the show, actually, which we're not supposed to talk about, but they actually look at dates of birth. And on the show is an 8-year difference. But Art Wallace addresses this in the backstory that the viewers didn't know about because it's on Shadows on the Wall. And Liz's father was named Joseph, and Liz's mother was named Carolyn, which she named the daughter after. And the mother devoted her life to giving Liz's father children. She was a real housefrau. And Liz actually in that writer's draft is 20 years older than Roger. And she gave birth
to a menopause baby.
Yes, she gave birth to Roger at the tender age. This is how detailed it is, which is fascinating for fans.
Hey, that shit happens, Keith.
She gave birth to Roger at the tender age of 38. And so there is a 20-year difference. And Liz actually, and the mother, incidentally, Carolyn, the mother died in childbirth. So Liz actually had to bring Roger up. And so that establishes
that makes a lot of sense.
Well,
Yes. And so you see that now establishes, and, we're just thrown into it because the show is starting. But that's the real reason for Liz dominating Roger and kind of acting like a mother to him, because in the original backstory, she was Roger's mother. in that way.
That's why fans, when you watch this, don't miss an episode because you're gonna be lost.
I mean, I have to sit there and say that when the show opens up, it's quite an interesting concept. You know, girl coming to this strange house mansion, because we do have those Jane Eyres, that the whole gothic feeling of everything. And we like most gothic novels. We get a lot of foreplay teasing. It's like, oh, and the ghost around here, and the ghost around here. Oh, have you been listening to the ghost around?
Yes, exactly.
But what I found weird about these first 25 episodes, these first 25 episodes take place over 3 days. That's the only time that passes in 25 days. It's 3 days.
Good point.
And in that point, you got Victoria telling, why are you here? Get out of here. We don't want you here. You got to hear. And she's, of course, she whines all the way through the first 25 episodes. Luckily, hopefully they, this is what we get at the moment. But, and you're thinking, and then next thing you know, it's like, within the first 3 days of her being there, she's got, why are you doing here? What you shouldn't be there. She gets herself mixed up in like the Collins family's, main evil villain character, which is supposed to be Burke Devlin. So she's got involved in him somehow. She's got herself mixed up in this storyline. She's got an unruly child that she has not that hates her.
Hates her guts.
Well, she gets kidnapped and nearly killed.
Yeah. But then she even even the simple fact is it's kind of like, you just get the first 3 episodes and you just have, and she's already, you just think that she'd just be a bit more trying to get on with people, but she just finds a way of alienating herself. I mean, she's kind of ticking off.
She's very stoic. She's stoic, and she's apathetic, maybe.
Well, I mean, the thing is, basically on the first day she's there, she pretty much just like starts accusing everyone about her, where she's coming from, where the money's coming from. It's like, if this is real life, you might want to wait a couple weeks before you start, accusing everyone of everything. But
that's Collinwood, and in Collinwood, nobody trusts each other. They want to desperately. They want to, but there's all this intrigue and all this stuff that happened where Liz has not been out of the house in 18 years, and then of course the plot line of Vickie looking for her real parents and what's going on there. And early on, what Dan Curtis wanted to do, but never did, was to potentially establish a link between Elizabeth as being Vickie's mother. Because, and the reason actually that Alexander Mulkey got the job, from what I understand, is because of her resemblance to Joan Bennett. And they were thinking of doing that. But here's a very interesting thing coming again out of Shadows on the Wall. The original interpretation, and this is what would have played had all the other stuff not happened later on, which kind of put emphasis away from Vickie into a new light, which if everybody keeps listening, you'll see what that was. But originally, what was going to happen was Vickie would find a handwritten letter from Paul Stoddard, who was Elizabeth's husband. And this handwritten letter, she's looking at it, and it looks very much, the handwriting looks very much like the letter that was left with her when she was a baby, 2 months old, and it was in the foundling home. It says, please take care, I cannot take care of her, please take care of her. And she realizes that the handwriting is similar. She goes to Liz with it. And then Liz is backed up against the wall and tells her the whole story. That Paul Stoddard is, in fact, Vickie's father, but Liz is not her mother. What happened is that Paul Stoddard admitted to Liz 18 years ago, which really tore the marriage apart, that Paul had an affair with somebody, and that there was a child, and so it was Paul who went on an alleged business trip, but really took the baby to the foundling home and left her there with the note. And that's what would have happened had things not occurred differently. So there it is. And now you have everybody saying, oh, we know that now that Liz is the mother, and that's been proven later on, and we'll go into that at another point in time. But originally, if it had turned out differently, Liz would not have been the mother. Paul would have been the father. And what happened to Vickie's mother? Vickie's mother moved away from Collinsport, wasn't heard of again. Liz did not know what the hell was going on.
You
And
know
at that same time, you still had the, sorry, Keith, go.
You know what's quite interesting is that Elizabeth, in about episode, I think it's about episode number 11, she talks to Victoria about Matthew. And Matthew's daughter,
Nothing more than
he has a daughter that basically runs away due to unanswered circumstances 20 years ago. And so, and some scandal hit. Now you can actually review this if you watch that. I think it's episode 11 or episode 12 where she's talking to him about Matthew, and talks about why Matthew basically started living on Collinswood about 20 years ago, and the reason being that he was living there because he had a daughter who had to run away because of shame. So, and it was kind of interesting because you kind of wondered, like, maybe the Victoria who her parented is, maybe it was going to be part of this storyline. As we know, Dark Shadows tends to start dropping storylines.
Right.
Well, wouldn't that be an interesting twist? Because I believe it was Matthew who kidnapped Victoria and tried to kill her.
That's later. That's later.
Yeah.
That's later then. Yeah. But no, when we first meet Matthew, and it was George Mitchell, I believe, was the first one who played Matthew. Thayer David played him later, but Matthew is Matthew is this very devoted to the Collins family. They're very, very suspicious of Vickie, and
he's always getting after her for poking around here and there.
Signs are in the basement. Well, what are you doing in the basement? And he's going to hit her with a fire poker, which I don't think would have endeared him too much to the police. And then little David, the little monster, is hiding in one of the boxes and stuff.
Right.
Liz breaks that up.
Well, I have to say, I think that David is probably the first millennial that we see on television ever.
Oh yeah.
See what happens when you don't spank your kids? They'll take something out of the car and murder you. They'll try to murder you.
Well, Victoria did do a lot of poking around the house, but that house
was always looking for something.
Right.
It appeared to be anyway.
She
was looking for a pattern. She was looking for her background, where she came from, and it was. She felt that it was irrevocably tied to the house. So isn't it any wonder that she'd be running around the house looking for things that could help her? But of course, she was nosy like hell. If you consider 3 days into the job, and she's already poking her stuff into
everybody else's stuff.
But remember, also, she's the audiences, it's like audience participation or audience transference. Vickie is the viewer. We are looking, since Vickie is the one that's doing the teasers, and my name is Victoria Winters, and blah, blah, blah. So we are looking at Collinwood through her eyes. So naturally, we're going to want to look and see what's going on. And we actually, and the fans who really liked the show identified with Vickie, and they said, "Yeah, let's walk with Vickie and see what's happening." So it worked very well, I think.
One of the things that I like in the opening, where they gave the lead in, and it was like a little synopsis of what happened and what's coming up, and they presented the questions. It was a nice tease, and it was a good writing tool.
I think I have to agree with you. What also I find that's quite interesting about these first 25 episodes is the first 3 weeks. We have a cast of characters that are very unlikable. Elizabeth Stoddard is not very likable. Roger's not very. Caroline's a spoiled brat. David's horrible. Vickie's whining. Burke is not very likable. And of course, we have Maggie. Probably the only likable one is probably
Maggie.
Maggie.
No, Maggie in the first 3 is just horrible. I mean, she's got the
blonde wig.
Right.
What was with the blonde wig?
I mean, she's like the worst waitress that ever wait on you. She's got her nose in every, like you're having a private conversation and she's overhearing.
She's right there, yeah.
You're right. And she calls Vickie a jerk. She calls Vickie a jerk.
Yeah.
That's the famous jerk speech. Why a jerk? Jerk. You know how that's spelled? Because they originally wrote Maggie as a character who was, and that's what, and they gave her the blonde wig because they did. Dan Curtis did not want her to be confused with Vickie's dark hair, so they gave her the blonde wig as a kind of a to distinguish between the two, and the Maggie's demeanor once again starts to change, and that's later on with the writers.
Keith has mentioned several times that he noticed that things that they softened the characters up as time went on.
That was because of the writers.
Then we start with the evolution of Maggie, and what we got is now we got Maggie's now, she went from short blonde hair to long dark hair. She becomes softer. Sam becomes a lot more approachable. Burke becoming slightly kinder. Elizabeth and all the characters all become a bit softer. So I'm kind of wondering.
Except Roger. Roger's just stays level.
Even Roger does become a little kinder towards the 16th or 17th episode, where there's something about he kept a confidence with Vickie where he could have gone to Liz about it, but you see he's beginning to get to know Vickie better, and he's beginning to because Roger was afraid of letting anybody into the house. That's part of the backstory.
Well, they have so many secrets, and he was starting to get immediately suspicious of Vickie because of Burke Devlin as well. And I think it was like the 3rd or 4th episode he was coming after on that one.
Well, this is also before they had a housekeeper as well. So he's like, oh no, someone else to pick up after, because then we have to pick up after ourselves. We don't have a housekeeper.
Did you find it kind of odd that a matriarch and a woman that classy, like Elizabeth Stoddard, would have to cook for everybody and clean for everybody? That just didn't seem like it was, jiving well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
no, an A-type control freak would do that. I mean, because you don't trust anybody to do it right.
Well,
and if you don't trust people, who knows, who's going to be poisoning who.
Talking about housekeepers, here's another little bit from Shadows on the Wall, and that is that, in fact, Joe Haskell's mother was a housekeeper for the Collins family. She'd come in part-time to help them out. And that's how Joe met Carolyn, because Joe would take the mother, when Joe learned how to drive, he would take the mother to and from Collinwood in order to help her out with the transportation. And it was through there that he met Carolyn, and he developed a crush on her. So once again, you see how all these things are now gelling into place.
But you know what I don't understand is the relationship between Carolyn and Joe. Because the thing is, we got Carolyn, she's like the princess. You got to remember that Collins are the royalty and Joe's the commoner. Really.
Yeah. Yes, but if you are trying to prove how hip you are, you wouldn't go out with, the guy that your mother approves of.
Yeah, I just can't see that.
Carolyn wants her mother's approval.
With her marrying a fisherman. I mean, what kind of life is? Can you imagine Carolyn as the wife of a fisherman? Really?
No.
Well, that's why she ran after Burke, and she's gonna have her rebellious phase. But
Burke, I always saw, for me, the Burke and Carolyn. I thought that maybe because Carolyn's grown up fatherless, so I thought maybe it's like Burke was like a daddy thing. That was kind of a daddy figure thing.
Well, it's an interesting.
I think Carolyn has daddy issues.
I'm not going to say it, but getting back to David, and there will be a point later on where Burke and David develop a daddy-son thing, and it's a very interesting thing, but that's not talked about now. And once again, friends, tune in for the next installment on that. But
sometimes it's hard to separate all the episodes because
it is hard. But getting back to David, Art Wallace once again, but the reason I keep quoting from this is because it's so interesting to see the insights of how he saw the characters. And according to him, David's only real comfort and security were those rare moments when her mother opened her heart and held her close to him, which is why you'll see the right after Roger has the crash, the next thing David is looking out the window and saying, "Mother." and that is a kind of the first hint we ever hear about of the relationship between David and his mother. And the backstory there is that when David was 5 years old, he witnessed a tremendous fight between Roger and Laura, who was the mother, and they were throwing things at each other, and they were cursing each other out, and it really traumatized David, who was hiding, as usual, under a chair while all this was going on. But the one thing that he remembered was they were both screaming about Burke Devlin. So this is where the connection is made, that they were fighting about Burke Devlin. Well, what's going on here? And that goes into the relationship.
Well, that's just the onset of his revenge, because he was despising the Collinses for years. They had power, they had money, so why not,
Well, Bert
knew he had it in for the family, and he was going to start. He was after Roger right from the get-go in the first 20.
But you got to remember that Roger sent Bert to jail.
Yes, he did. But that's later you find that out, though.
No, we find out in the first 25 episodes.
No, you do that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you also find out that Sam helped him do it.
Yeah, Sam's got a part to play.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Exactly.
Yep.
And I believe whatever happens, that made Sam into an alcoholic. Whatever happened between Burke and Roger and Sam is what turned Sam into an alcoholic.
Well, Sam was a real saucepan. He was always drinking. So
he was a great artist.
But they all were. Hey, listen. Roger had his brandy. Burke had his bourbon. Sam had his scotch. I mean, they all. If you want to have if you want people to get together for a Dark Shadows drinking party, they can all play characters and drink according to what the characters drank.
Such a difference in the times, though. Smoking cigarettes, and they're probably drinking actual alcohol.
Well, Elizabeth had her sherry.
Yeah.
Sherry is later on. But getting back to David, so Art Wallace writes, he expected nothing from David. He expected nothing from anyone and developed an ingrained hostility almost to the point of paranoia. He is a frightened and often frightening child. Now, wasn't that great as David Hennessy interpreted that? He got that to a T. And you really saw how good an actor he was as a kid to be able to emote like that. And he did display the frightened child as well as the frightening child in terms of what he did with Roger. And in terms of what he did with Vickie, saying, Vickie, I want you to die. I want Roger to die. I hate you. That was the way
He says that a lot. I hate you.
I hate you.
I hate you.
My two boys ever come up and said that to me, or my grandson, it's just like, oh, no, not happening.
I think it's interesting that David Hennessy has, once Dark Shadow was over, he just totally disassociated with it. And
from acting altogether.
I mean, I have to sit there and say that he's probably one of the best actors in the show.
Yeah, I agree. That's sad because
I'll give him a lot of credit.
He did a good job.
He's the most annoying character in the first 25 episodes, but he's also one of the best actors. You just see that everything's prepared. He doesn't trip over his lines. He's not doing what those children actors tend to do, is that they tend to memorize the whole script. And so what they'll do is, like, when someone's speaking to him, they're kind of mouthing what the actor's telling him because they memorize the script. He doesn't do that.
I do think, from what I understand, he did correct the actors when they flubbed up on lines, but they didn't mind because they realized who they were dealing with. They realized the talent that they were dealing with.
Well, he was kind of a typical little boy. I mean, little boys are little shits like that. Let's face it. For anybody who's had children.
Well,
and he really the relationship between him and his father, though, was really tempestuous from the get-go as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have to sit there and say it's not the warmest family.
No, there's no hugs, there's no love. It's just
this is not Father Knows Best. I mean, come on. This is Dark Shadow. This is not Father.
But I'm saying we're talking about the Collins family is probably the most dysfunctional family on the face of the earth. There's nothing functional about this family whatsoever.
Have you noticed that they never sleep?
Yeah.
No matter what time of day and middle of the night, everybody's awake. They never sleep.
Was it in the first 25 episodes, forgive me if I'm wrong, that Roger was trying to get into Victoria Winter's bedroom?
Yes, yes, yes. And Liz caught him. And Liz caught him and had a big fight with him. And well, I just wanted to talk to her. That's all I wanted to do. And then Liz is like, but Roger, that kind of thing. And she gives him
You wanted to talk to her.
Yeah, I wonder what he was
going.
Actually, what was his point? Was it going where I think my dirty little mind goes, or was he just actually wanting to see?
I think Roger's just. I know. I'm sorry, but I think Roger's just asexual. I think once he had David, that was it. I don't think. I mean, if you ever notice, he doesn't actually get romantically involved. I mean, I'm jumping ahead here, but
can you blame him? after having the little monster, he calls him.
That's I wouldn't have any more kids either. It's like, no.
Well, I think maybe it has to do with Roger being emasculated. He feels like he's being emasculated. In a way, he is really because
he is.
He has no control of the business.
Well, Liz is emasculating him.
So
that's true. He is emasculated technically.
Yeah. So
he does have relationships later on, but they're never really romantic.
Yeah.
By the way, that according to the backstory, David was born 7 months after Roger and Laura got married. So already. Dum, dum, da, 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 da. So right away, there's establishing the backstory. Also goes into the fact that they had to get away when they had to get away from the house of the wild. Roger took Laura to 70 miles north of Bangor, wherever that is, 70 miles north, and Roger tried to make a go of it with his own insurance business. He ran an insurance company, but that wasn't going too well. And he had to live, and he and the wife and the kid had to live on checks from Liz. And that really shamed him. And eventually he had to come back defeated to the live at Collinwood. So you've got that backstory, which was never really gone into, again, playing in terms of why Roger feels the way he does, and the frustration that he feels, and the cynicism. And Louis Edmonds did that so marvelously with the pseudo-British accent. And of course, you always wondered, this is a Maine family, and what the heck is, I don't know what you're doing, going on when everybody else is, and of course, everybody else has Midwestern accents.
Years later, though, he played in All My Children. I believe he was in All My Children.
Yes, he was.
And he did still talk like that. He talked the same way when he was on All My Children.
Louis Edmonds comes from Louisiana, and he actually developed that accent when he got into acting to cover up the Southern accent, the deep Southern drawl that he had. So he used that during his stage career, and it was and during Dark Shadows, and it was really. The tribute to his acting ability was the forceful way in which he was able to play Roger, and also the scenes with Burke, with Mitchell Ryan, who also was. These were two strong personalities.
Very type A. They're always bumping heads.
Right.
Yeah, and that was part of the tension on the show that made it start to work. Believe it or not, even during those early days, 9 million people watched it, apparently. And the reason, from what I understand, that more people didn't watch it, that had to do with ABC. ABC, once again, was third in terms of the soap operas, CBS and NBC. So they didn't have a big following there. Plus, the affiliates, apparently, were sick and tired of Central ABC's programming. So they had they were switching ABC's Central stuff around. And so some ABC affiliates, even back then, had Dark Shadows on at 11 o'clock at night, which was ridiculous, because who the heck is going to watch that at 11 o'clock at night? So that was probably...
Right, exactly. That was a shitty time slot.
Yeah, so, I mean, that was another reason. It had nothing to do with Curtis or the plot or anything like that. It was ABC's bad reputation that made these affiliates switch Dark Shadows, and they didn't know anything about it, to a slot where it wasn't going to succeed as fast. And one wonders what would have happened, all those, the road not traveled. But that should also be spoken, that should also be addressed.
I also think though that for the first 25 episodes, the writing is a bit odd as far as the writing goes, because for instance, they don't know how to milk out a mystery here. Basically, you have the mystery of the accident of Roger. Okay. Now, most episodes will be like, we have a bunch of different characters who could be responsible for this. What we get here is Burke and I just think they could have been a bit more clever with this, because you have Burke in the garage. Okay, so it's going to be Burke sort of thing, and we know it's not going to be Burke because it's a mystery, isn't it? And then within 3 or 4 episodes, you find out it's David, and it's kind of like they could have been a bit more clever with drawing this mystery out about all these people don't like Roger, and one of these people could be we could have the Who Shot JR situation, a Dark Shadows version of Who Shot JR. But what we kind of got like one person who's found in the garage, which God knows why, because I just want to see what kind of car he's driving. I mean, that's really bad storytelling right there. It's like,
well, it's interesting.
A better excuse than that, because it's like, and then David, and then you find out, within a couple, after a couple episodes, you find out that it's David that did it. So it's not. So the mystery's gone now, and then
it's a mystery that the audience shares with with David and with the characters who know, and it's the rest of the characters finding out the truth that's a mystery.
Well, by the end of episode 25, you got all the clues are there, everything's there, and they're pretty much holding Elizabeth Stoddard down and beating her over the head with all this evidence, and she's like, well, we just need to figure out what's going on with David. Sort of. I
know.
You're kind of going, really, woman? You're in a Chalice.
Talk about passive aggressive
here, sort of thing.
Well, if you think about it, it's really a Columbo preface, because years later they did the same thing with Columbo, and it worked, where right from the get-go who's murdering who, and we see how Columbo finds out. But that was what was missing from Dark Shadows, and it really wouldn't have worked. And they did bring that constable into the and interestingly enough, that was the only constable that actually figured everything out. Every other sheriff they brought onto the show didn't know what the hell was happening. But he did. But again, that was a more traditional approach. So it's interesting that this thing was tried many, many years later with Columbo, and it worked, but only because they had a Columbo character. But that could not have worked on Dark Shadows.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, we'll find out what happens here, our next episode for Dark Shadows when we start.
But you do have a good base here with the first 25 episodes for, the following, to what goes on.
I do think they threw a lot of money at the first episode, because I found what's quite interesting is you got Vickie on the train talking to this scatty old woman who looks like she should have Tweety Pie next to her. And they're talking, and then you get like the mystery of Burke, and all of a sudden it's like, and then all of a sudden you get Elizabeth Stoddard at the big windows, and she goes out and she's got this woman looks like royalty the way she's dressed, and of course we never see her dressed like this ever again. And we're talking about, she normally, her dress is probably from Orbox, probably costs about $250, $300 normally, but this dress that she's wearing for the arrival of Vickie, they spent a couple $1,000 on this one.
It could have been a loner, you never know.
There's another blooper for you, because Orbox is misspelled in the credits. So instead of OHR, it's ORH. And these are the kind of things that fans say, and you think, my God, this is not going to get me on the subway with $2.75. But fans just cannot, cannot believe stuff like that. And Cy Thomasoff was spelled with Tomas, and they spelled it like Thomas with Thomas. And we're saying, well, what were they smoking? You really wonder. But, once again, these things were, you look at that now with so much fondness, because the plots were so complex, and the music, and let's remember Robert Cobart's signature music, which I think was very original. No more organs with the traditional soap operas, and now you've got a full orchestra playing original horror music, which was gripping at that particular time and that particular moment, and it really seemed to set the mood of Collinwood and Collinsport. So Dark Shadows, even in those first 25 episodes, had a lot of good things working for it.
It is interesting. I think they're still finding their ground, and you can tell that they're all finding their feet. The first 25,
Yes,
which
yes.
makes it interesting. I can understand why it probably didn't grab viewers right off the bat because it was something different and new. I do find there's some things like with Joe's storyline, and I said before, we're looking at the first 25 episodes here, so we're taking everything at face value here, and that carousel Mr. Snow storyline that Joe has, I'll have a little boat and I'll buy another boat and I'll build myself a fleet, and you're kind of going, and you're expecting Carolyn to sit next to him and start singing "When the Children Are Asleep" or something, and you're kind of going, really, Joe, this is your goal in life, is to have your own fishing boat, and you want to take care of a spoiled girl who's not going to be able to live on your $25 extra a week that her mom's going to be paying you. So I just kind of wish that so it's kind of an interesting way of looking at things. I mean, of course, what you alluded to later, where Joe's relationships go, does start making more sense as the stories go on. Where I think I like the character of Joe and I like the character of Carolyn, but there's really no chemistry in this first 25 episodes of these two people. And the thing is because on page they shouldn't work, and they don't work because Carolyn is from a different class and Joe is working class. And so you got what's going on at the same time. And the thing is, and even though you sit there to say that Colin, all the things about Colin, but and with the story that you gave us that Joe's mom did some housekeeping there and stuff like this, you don't really mingle with the staff. Again, we got to remember the Collins people. And the thing is, if you look at the way they handle everyone else in town, they're all staff. They're not. Maggie's like, okay, Maggie, you're a commoner. You're part of the town. We're better than you. And you do this in the first 25 episodes. And so when we get to the part where these characters start evolving and becoming the characters that we love, it starts to make a lot more sense. And I think that
it does.
And I said after the first 3 weeks, you can see where all of a sudden it's like, we're going to change gears here. And this is where you start seeing things change. And I see that now you can see people start molding into their evolutions of what their characters are going to be.
I think I'm saying for new viewers and people that have just finally found this, hang with it, because it does eventually make sense and you will get into it. And it's something you got to stick with if you really, if you're a true fan, like I know all of us are, you just roll with it. You really got to.
Well, the thing of it is that those first 3 weeks, they throw a lot of balls in the air. And, when you're, juggling that many, you can't go into a lot of depth. They wanted to really set the stage so they could, really launch the series and get a broader base.
Well, I think the whole series as a whole had 15 major storylines, I believe, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
the big ones.
Something like that.
I think we're also got to where Dark Shadows basically didn't know how to jumble their storylines too much. Because what we have is, not to go into what's going to happen later on, but Dark Shadows learns to jumble storylines very, very well, where basically it's like you got something going on underneath, and like one show would be about what storyline, this other storyline is going on at the same time, and another storyline, and they learn to weave all these storylines here. What we kind of got here is we kind of got a storyline going. So we basically start with Victoria, and why is she here, and she wants her parentage. Then we got kind of Burke there. It's like, and Burke's like that bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
He goes in and says stuff. And then we kind of got Carolyn coming in going da-da-da, and Victoria asking, kind of thing. And she shows a little bit of interest. So the Burke storyline is not really coming out at all, sort of thing. He's kind of just there. And even though it's like, is he going to stay, should he stay or should he go kind of storyline that goes on.
There's revenge for Burke. And I was also going to add that with Joe, you were talking about, remember that the writers tried to sweeten the pot. Burke approached Joe and offered to give him enough money to buy his boat, 3,200. Right. I don't know where they came up with that crazy figure, 3,298 or whatever that balance was, in exchange for information about the Collins family. And Joe said, "Oh no, I'm not doing it." And he went right to Liz and tattled on him because he knew that he was going to get into Carolyn's hooks.
He was Elizabeth Collins' bitch. Like, I'm going to tell on you.
So he knew where his bread was buttered, so to speak. And but I think that, if you consider all the constraints they were under and stuff, and looking at it, of course, it's maybe Monday morning quarterbacking. But look what they had. They had a sense of humor through Roger and the way they did things. They had those complex characterizations, those set designs from Ty Thomasoff. Some of that stuff was actual oak wood panel, not the balsam stuff that you'd see on the regular soap operas, the film sequences, the sound. So they had a lot of elements. They just had to grow into it and to find their niche.
Yeah, you can tell that they're finding their footing. And that's why I say that, thank God, I don't know what happened after the first 3 weeks, but thank God that they all of a sudden they started doing a 180 with the characters. Because I say that after the first 3 weeks, what we do get is all of a sudden the characters start coming alive a bit. We got Maggie coming alive, we got Sam coming. Now we got like we got the Maggie Evans character, which is played wonderfully by Catherine Lee Scott. And the thing is all of a sudden she becomes this caring daughter who's taking care of her alcoholic father, who's been alcoholic almost all her life. And then so we got that, and then we got Sam's, like, he cares for his daughter, but he's torn. And then we got the part of and all of a sudden we got David. Now we got that David's actually being taken care of a bit. We got Carolyn that's doesn't realize that now she's got choices. She realized that she can start taking control of her life, and this happens in the first 25, where she's not. All of a sudden she started to become a woman now, and this is quite interesting. Which as the show goes on, these things become grown. We get these kind of themes coming on. We get Elizabeth Stoddard, who's all of a sudden it's like she has a bit of empathy. She in the first 3 weeks of episodes, she doesn't have any empathy. She's like bomb, 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 bomb sort of thing, and she's basically controlling all the chess pieces on the board. And all of a sudden, we do see a little bit of empathy coming on with her. So
Credit that to the new writers, because again, Wallace had written the first 65 episodes, and I think Curtis was getting tired with the way things were playing out. So he had the new writers. He had Ron Sprode, as I said, and the other one, and Francis Swan, and it was to their credit that they developed these characters in the other direction, exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that is quite interesting. And of course, when we do the next episode of this podcast, I'm sure that we'll talk about how much growth is that we're starting to see from these characters. And I say that's when, for me, I felt the first 3 weeks of episodes, they were okay. I didn't find anyone that I liked. I found them all kind of stoic and kind of really negative, kind of negative, horrible people. I mean, there's not one nice personality trait in all of them. And Victoria's kind of whining her way through the first 3 weeks.
She does whine a lot.
Carolyn's stamping her feet, and being honest, I mean, Carolyn's acting like the little tramp of the town for some odd reason. I mean, it's like, come dance with me. And meanwhile, she's got her boyfriend there, and then wonder like, oh my God, Joe, you beat up these guys. I can't believe you did it. It's like,
I know.
It's like, you started it, woman. I mean, come on, take some ownership here, And then we do get the change, which I have to sit there and say is a welcome. I think that, we do ask in our interview that's coming up with Catherine, we did ask her if there was, did she know why this change happened? And she does give quite an interesting answer.
Yeah.
But it's almost like, were they looking at the ratings, or were they looking at, did they get some feedback from somewhere? And maybe that's the reason why they're bringing all the new characters in. But yeah, I mean, I think, the first 25 episodes are interesting, and I think that
it's groundwork. It's groundwork.
We're all fans here, and we all pretty much know what's coming. For the new person who's never actually seen Dark Shadows or something like this, it's going to be quite interesting. And even if you're very familiar with the Dark Shadows universe here, this is quite interesting because you see how things have started and how they will progress, and you kind of know what's coming. But when it does progress to when it becomes this great big ratings winner that we see a year later with this series, you can understand where all these characters were coming from. And I think you get more of an understanding. So when we do get that the great big ratings earner of 1967 with the, with the famous character that we shall not speak of at this time.
We shall not speak of it until we have to.
But when he comes in, it does make a lot more sense. And these characters' motivations have grown so much, and there's so much this backstory that, unfortunately, I think when a lot of people start in with those episodes, when the one we shall not speak of at the moment, when he comes and they come into the
shall not be named.
I think that I don't think you can enjoy the series if you don't start from the springboard that we're starting from.
Well, the thing of it is, they did have that flavor of the supernatural. The hinting of Josette's ghost.
Well, it was a gothic romance. The ghost, I don't think they did talk about the Widow's Hill, the origin of the Widow's Hill storyline between Carolyn was telling Vickie, and at that point, Josette was one of the governesses that threw her. That was the way the plot line originally developed. There were 3 governesses, and they all threw themselves off Widow's Hill because of, and would Vickie be the next one to throw her? There was that hint of, would Vickie decide to be a suicide? And of course, that plot line later changed, where the widows were the widows of sailors who were lost at sea, and they kept waiting for the sailors to come back. And again,
sadly, there are places like that in New England where women did used to stand out there and wait for their seafaring,
where we from?
to come home.
Sackett's Harbor was like that as well. They used to stand.
Yes.
And if something happens, and if the ship would crash or their man wasn't coming home from, well, at that point, World War 1812 war, they would actually throw themselves off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's several places around there where you could drown because we were stupid enough to swim there when we were kids.
Yeah. Get drunk, dive off the cliff. Yay! Army
we used to dive off the oil docks. We had oil docks.
By the way, Vickie Winter's original name was supposed to be Sheila March. Thank God they didn't name her Sheila March.
I'm so glad they named her Victoria Winter. So it's so cute, sir.
But her personality is very much a Sheila. She is a Sheila.
She really does. Well, it's true though. Sorry, people. She does whine. She whines so much throughout all these episodes. And sorry, Alexandra.
To be honest, I don't think this is the fault of the actress. I think
the writers.
Because if you listen to her lines, it's like
the director too.
Yeah,
well, that's another story altogether. But
her lines are very whiny. It's like, what can we do here? I want to know who my parents is. Who are you? Why are you here? I don't want to get involved. No, I don't want to talk to the police. No, it's like, okay, Victoria, calm down. It's like, this is before recreational drugs became fashionable, and she could have used them. She should have forefronted marijuana. I think she just needs to relax a bit. Maybe she drinking too much coffee. Those 3 days of traveling, I think, really got to her. Before she got to Collinswood, I think she's just under a lot of stress. Maybe it's. So we'll just see what happens to Victoria after this. But
by the way,
she put an awful lot together in the first 27 episodes, just from that one little slip of paper, that she had.
Well, let's talk about the post. How fast does the mail service work? She's there 3 days. She sent a letter out to them. She gets a reply back. God, this is the best post. Collins has the best post office in the world.
Pretty good.
I posted a letter from work the other day, and it's still not to the person.
Well, you gotta remember back then, you got mail sometimes twice a day, and it was 7 days a week.
Right.
So
Well, she got it in 3 days, because the first 25 episodes happens in 3 days.
She was using the Pony Express.
By the way, in terms of bloopers, and of course there were a lot of minor bloopers, but the major one, and let's mention that, is Louis Edmonds, who did very, very few bloopers during his stay on Dark Shadows. But when he did it, they were major ones, and he was describing the accident, and he was saying that he was I was going down a hill, and 100 miles down the bottom of, it seemed like 100 miles. It was 100 feet down the bottom of the hill.
But he was professional enough to cover it.
That's right. That's the way he recovered from it. Yes.
But this is another thing about Collinsport and Collinwood. is how far are these places away from each other? Because first they're driving down, there's this long, steep drive that we see during Roger's call. And then somehow David gets there automatically. He just walks down the town. Like, David, what are you doing in town? Going through Burke Devlin's room.
The question is never explained that when he drives out of the garage, he's driving a Mustang, and when he's involved in the accident, it all of a sudden turns into a Plymouth Fury. So somewhere along the line, he changes cars. And by the way, both license plates are New York license plates. And again, this is supposed to be Maine, everybody.
Right.
And of course, it was all shot in New York, so they were using New York license plates with cars. And then you wonder, well, he's driving these Fords and Mustangs. I mean, aren't they supposed to be rich? Can't they really afford something great like, Rolls Royces and Bentleys and stuff like that? But instead, they're driving, quote, middle class, end quote, cars. That, again, was the budget that they were working with. And nobody expected fans to ever look at that and pick it up. And they didn't back then.
Well, they probably didn't have their screen. Because I was talking about, like, when I was thinking when you're mentioning the film footage that they use.
Yeah.
And I have to just say, on streaming, which is, of course, on Amazon Prime at the moment, I have the DVD box set as well. And even on video, you do get a clear picture. I'm not sure how clear these pictures would have been when you're watching it through snow.
Probably not.
Because you have to remember, like, back in the day when this show was on, I mean, for us, I mean, it showed, we were living in Fulton at the time, so we would catch it on Syracuse, on the ABC station in Syracuse. And it was good reception. We got an okay picture, but it wasn't a clear picture. And of course, when we went after my parents' divorce, in the final year of it, we moved to Watertown, which is further away from Syracuse. And it was a lot of, like, moving the antenna around and hold, how many people can hang on to the rabbit ears to get like a decent picture, because it's quite snowy. So
plus too, these days you can, you've got control, you can stop, you can rewind, you can, inspect every little detail in, but back then the story carried you along and you went with the characters. You weren't watching for the bloopers.
And another thing, in 1966, you had to turn the TV on, and it'd come on like 3 minutes after you turned it on. so it's talking about like what the picture tube was, because remember the picture tubes were the concave ones, weren't they? They curved.
The big enormous things, and they had shitty. Let's face it. I mean, we're so spoiled this day and age with our smart TVs and things like that, because I don't think my kids could even fathom watching black and white TV or putting tinfoil on the antennas and holding onto your friend and making them stand there, just so you can get the reception.
Well, I had to go up on top of the roof because we lived in our house. You've seen the house I grew up in, Vickie, but it basically was built in like 1798. And basically you had to got to the third floor, crawl out on one roof, jump up onto the other roof, then jump onto another roof because it's one of those old houses. And then
that's a tall roof too.
And then you get like 5 people going, can you see the screen yet? No.
That's a pretty that's a pretty tall roof too. I wouldn't have got up there. Fuck that.
I know. It was my job to do that.
Well, I tell the story when it was coming back on in reruns in the late 70s, and it hadn't come back to Brooklyn yet where I lived, but it was on a UHF station in Philly. And I had a small little portable set with the circular.
I used to have one of those. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so I put it against the living room window facing a fire escape, and I tried getting it in. It was on at 11:30 at night, so the chances are, but it came in very snowy, and then I had a great idea. I had like a metal Lazy Susan kind of thing, and I took the Lazy Susan and positioned it opposite the antenna, and that boosted the signal. And then I was able to get it in, and I was jumping up and down. But when it rained,
they had like a screen like about this big, 5 inches.
Yeah. But when it rained, then I couldn't get anything, and I was cursing the damn TV set when it rained in Brooklyn, because then you couldn't get any kind of signal. But that's how far Dark Shadows fans will go to look at stuff like that.
So what we're going to do is we're going to cut to a commercial break, and then we're going to have a special interview with Catherine Lee Scott. This is part one of our two-part interview. So if you stay tuned, you'll be able to listen to our commercial from IKEA and Shudder, and a special interview with Catherine Lee Scott.
Okay, Bradley, tell the class about your holidays.
Yeah, it was really good. My dad built us a new kitchen. It's got wooden bench tops and some stupid self-closing drawers. There was a dishwasher that was a real and even a breakfast bar. Mum thought Dad was a massive.
Get a kitchen installed without teaching your kids new words. Visit ikea.com.au. We can plan, deliver and install the whole thing for you.
Hello, welcome to the Literary License Podcast. And today we have Catherine Lee Scott, who is an author, an actress, and an all-around media guru, as we like to think of her. Hello, Catherine. Welcome to the Literary License Podcast.
Thank you very much. I can't imagine. I'm thinking of myself as a guru of anything. I will put it this way. I will happily cop to the fact that I'm a jack of many trades. But I'm a master of
I know, you really, once I got into reading about what you've been up to recently, you really got your finger in just about every pie. I mean, you're doing all kinds of stuff. I mean, that's fantastic. It's so good to see this and to hear about it.
Well, you know what? Maybe I'm just a late bloomer because now I've done something really ridiculous, I think. I bought a house. I bought this two-story farmhouse up in the boundary waters of Minnesota. It happens to be in the town where my brother is mayor. And now I'm renovating this house because I think it would be a wonderful writer's retreat. It's such beautiful country up there with, you know, bears and elk and moose and trees and lakes and canoeing and lots of distraction. But also, I just thought it would have cold. This town is known. It has the reputation and the record for the coldest temperature in the lower 48, 60 below. But you don't have to go there in the winter. Anyway, so I've taken on what now I'm a construction foreman.
Our goodness.
Well,
You put me to shame.
I'm
almost embarrassed here.
I've never done it before, but I've taken it out as sort of a family project with my two brothers, and I'm very close to them, and I adore their wives. So it's kind of a fun family project. But it's taken me far afield of things I should be doing here, writing and acting.
Is your new house in where you grew up in Ribbonsdale?
Oh, Robbinsdale.
Robbinsdale,
Minnesota. No. It's sadly, it's about 3.5 hours north of where I grew up. I grew up on a farm, but this is all farmland. And this house I just fell in love with it. And it's a bit tumble down, so it needs lots of work. But I think
Those are the best ones, though.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun project.
Mm-hmm. Now, it says that what I have here is that you grew up in Minnesota and then you moved to New York to study at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I grew up wanting to be either a journalist or an actor. And they were really, they were the things that I was involved in all through school. And when I was 16, I got a scholarship to Northwestern University, and I applied in both journalism and theater, and I got the scholarship in theater. And oddly enough, that sort of, I guess, determined what was going to happen, because I then got a scholarship to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, again, drama. And even though I continued to write, theater, drama became my career.
And you also worked as a Playboy bunny in the New York Playboy.
I was so surprised when I read that. I guess
yeah, but that was, we all need a bread and butter job when we're going to school, and I certainly did. And I got to New York. I got a job at Bloomingdale's in their complaint department. And I earned only $18 a week because I had to work part-time. I was in school. So I saw an ad in the New York Times that said, "Girls, step into the spotlight, be a Playboy bunny." And it was the beginning of the new New York Playboy Club. And I also noticed that I was underage. I didn't stop.
I don't think they cared either back then.
Well, they did. They cared a lot because the State Liquor Authority.
That is true. This is New Jersey, is it not?
New York.
So, New York. So I just took my one-piece bathing suit and I went over there, and there was another gal standing in line. In fact, we applied together. Lauren Hutton, who was Mary Hutton at the time.
Oh,
and
wow.
She was also a little shy of the age, but we both got the job. And so every day when I finished classes at 1:00, I'd race over to the Playboy Club, and because I was under, you had to be 21 to work in the evening. So I got to work until the cocktail shift was over, which was perfect because then I could study and so on. But that 5 hours a day that I spent at the Playboy Club, walking around as a Playboy bunny, shoving the schoolgirl part of me in the locker, could not be more fun. And the women I met when I was working there have become lifelong friends.
That's awesome.
And you do know some of them. When I wrote the Bunny Years about Playboy, I got in touch with some of my friends that I had worked with there. Susan Sullivan, who's wonderful on the Kominsky method now, but she did Darman, Gregg, and Falcon Crest, is probably my oldest friend. We met at the Playboy Club. And I still run into Lauren Hutton here and there. And Debbie Harry was a bunny at the
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that.
And just some other wonderful women that I'm really still close to.
They did do a TV movie about the Playboy bunnies. Did they base that on your book, or was that?
Sadly, no. That was a ripoff. But I did sell the Bunny Years to Brian Grazer, who I think wanted to do a television series. The one that he did do was not necessarily based on my book, but he had bought it by then. The earlier one that was done was just a flat out ripoff.
Okay.
And dreadful. I remember feeling bad about it at the time, and a director friend of mine said, "Catherine, it's so awful. People will see it once and forget about it."
Yeah, I remember it was like on CBS, and I watched it with my mom, and I remember my mom going, "Maggie Evans was a Playboy bunny," because my mom could never remember actors' real names. She only knew my character names. So,
That's the same with my family.
Like every time
they only know you by your Dark Shadows names. They don't know your real names.
Yeah.
Maggie.
Well, I mean, the whole many years that Falcon Crest was on TV, every time David Selby would appear, my mom goes, "There's Quentin Collins."
Well, now here's the funny thing, because I see Susan all the time, and we have shared a couple of boyfriends and husbands because David Selby and Rachel Drummond were an item on Dark Shadows, and Mitch Ryan, and he played her husband on Dharma and Gregg. So Susan and I have Mitch and we joke about it. We joke about it fairly often because we both love those guys.
And then it looks like you went on to do Dark Shadows, starting in 1966 for ABC television. What was your audition process for Dark Shadows?
I was still working at the Playboy Club, and I had an agent who'd seen me perform in something at the American Academy, and I had something like 7 or 8 auditions. I just kept getting called back, and interestingly enough, I ran into Louis Edmonds, Nancy Barrett, and Alexandra Molka in the auditioning at the same time. We were all in the same room waiting to audition. So, they were narrowing it down. And then I did a screen test at Universal Studios in Hollywood. And while I was there, my agent rang and said, as soon as you get back, you're going to find a script on your doorstep. They want you to come in for a camera test. And I went in, I did a camera test with Mitch Ryan for Burke Devlin and another actor up for that same role. And I realized that if I was the only gal auditioning with these 2 guys, maybe I had the role.
That's pretty cool.
Turned out I did. So I got the role of Maggie Evans.
What a good job you did. You were just so good at it. I mean, I was watching the other day ago, I was catching up on some of the older episodes, and was it House of Dark Shadows?
Yes, we did 3 years after we did the series. Dan Curtis wanted to direct, and he had Sam Hall read a script along with Gordon Russell for House of Dark Shadows, and Jonathan Frid as Barnabas Collins and I starred in that. And it was my first film. So I think that Dan Curtis has been a catalyst for so many wonderful things in my life. It was really great. It was my first television series, my first film. Later on, when I moved to England, he directed The Turn of the Screw for CBS and cast me. So that was my first movie of the week. There were just so many things. I don't think I would have written the books without Dan Curtis encouraging me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was actually, at the moment, we're going to be covering all the Dark Shadows episodes, and we're doing, like 25 episodes for each episode that we're covering. And I noticed, like, in the first month, for the first 3 weeks, everyone is kind of, well, your character, Maggie, was quite brassy. And then and then it's like everyone was quite hard. And all of a sudden, like after 3 weeks, everyone softened up. Your blonde wig disappeared, and all of a sudden you became very softened, and everybody's character became softened. Yeah. Do you know why that automatically was that sudden change? Because it kind of like...
when we were, all of us who were in the first week of episodes, that would include Joan Bennett, Nancy Barrett, Joel Crothers, me, and who else? Those were the primary characters, and we rehearsed for a week on the first episode, and I was meant to be very brassy and tough, the gal from the wrong side of the tracks, and Alexandra was supposed to be so sweet. Well, it's. The writers don't know us. And when you're doing a series like that and you're picking up a new script every day and you never know what's happening the next week, the writers get to know you and they write to your strengths. Mm-hmm. And very often, and we're going into people's living rooms. So there's also a sense of intimacy that starts, happening just in the way you work, and we got to know each other better. So all of those factors contributed to the fact that we all became more of who we are. And the wig was discarded because I looked very much like Alexandra Molka. We both had very long dark hair. We'd both just graduated from the academy. And she had a Danish background. I have a Norwegian background. Facially, there were even similarities.
True.
And Dan was a little bit concerned about that. So he suggested that they put a blonde wig on me. And then he came to the studio one day and he saw me rehearsing with my own long dark hair. And he said, "What were you wearing a wig for? You'd completely And Leela, the director, told him that, well, it had been established now. I had short blonde hair. Nevertheless, the next day I showed up in the next air show with long dark hair. And of course, when you get into a role, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that I look like Alexandra Molka.
No.
I mean, we don't look alike, but Dan just saw two brunettes, and I think I put a reddish kind of rinse in my hair just in case, but that was all. That was all. We don't bear the least resemblance.
Well, you're both quite lovely, so you had that down anyway. What was that?
Well, I think that contributed, though, to Dan making Maggie. Maggie, all of a sudden, who was a waitress in a diner, who knows if she graduated from high school, but suddenly, when Alexandra left the show, Maggie became the governess.
Right.
Out of the blue. And so I think that was also part of Dan's thinking. He had a vision of Victoria Winters, and he instead of hiring another actress, he just bumped me up.
Yep, the governess. What was Alexandra like?
Oh, she was lovely. She was just charming. We had as I say, a bit in common because of Scandinavian heritage. I think both her parents. Maybe her father was Danish. My father was Norwegian. Anyway, we were pals. We all were. Nancy and Alexandra and I were all very close in age, all within a year of each other. And I think the intimacy of working together in our own studio 16, established a kind of family atmosphere. And everybody was very supportive. I do not ever remembering a single contretemps between any two actors. It just never happened. And from my understanding, that sort of thing does arise in other companies, other shows. It simply never, ever happened on our show that I was aware of.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You all had chemistry, though. You did. You all seemed to you even cover each other when there was a blooper when you're doing
my God. Yeah, we functioned like a little repertory company. It was all of us had done stage work. A good many of us had done summer stock, and summer stock is simply survival of the fittest. You barely know your lines. You just get on there and do something. So yeah, we all looked out for each other. There's no question. We were close knit then, and we still are.
Now, Sam Evans was played by two different actors, and you started out with Mark Allen, then you moved on to David Ford. What was it like when a character you got used to working in their acting style and then would change and you get a different acting style, but they're actually the same character that you're acting against? How was that like?
That's different because they were both excellent actors. I think Mark Allen was really from California. I think he wanted to move back to California. And also, he just wasn't used to learning lines like that. And that's very difficult. You take on a show like that, and you've got 30 pages of dialogue every night. And he wasn't comfortable with that. And he was replaced by David Ford, who was primarily a stage actor in New York. And when you're even though there was no time lapse between the change. I mean, one day I was with one father, the next day with the other. Mm-hmm. An actor is playing for the moment anyway. And I just shifted without even thinking about it. You simply respond to the moment and to what the other actor gives you. It's not so odd in that there are a lot of shows that are double cast. So when you are always working with two different actors in one role, that happens often. It happens on Broadway. I mean, Jeff Daniels is leaving To Kill a Mockingbird and Ed Harris is walking in.
Right.
So, this is not an unusual thing.
Yeah, it happens on stage all the time. I know that.
Yeah, and it also happened with Jimmy Hall. an actor who was in my my acting class with Uta Hagen, and he was cast as Willie Loomis, and he was replaced by Johnny Carlin, and we just went with it. And if you remember right, it happened with Burke Devlin. Two different actors played that role.
Right.
Anthony George took over for Mitch Ryan, and Mitch Ryan was doing a Broadway play with Lee Remick. He was doing Wait Until Dark, and he left. So we dealt with this multiple times.
What are your views on when an actor leaves and then people write salacious rumors about that person when they leave? For instance, there are some salacious rumors why Mark Allen left, and all the other. I mean, in reality, the reasons are totally different than what is being said. Him acting inappropriate. So, how do you feel about people perpetrating these kind of rumors like through the web and carrying these rumors alive today when they shouldn't really be left alive?
I think I live in a kind of bubble because I wasn't aware that there were these sites. But Laura said to me one day, because Laura and I talk all the time, and she said, you won't believe it, but there are people out there that say terrible things about us. And then she laughed. You know that laugh, that wonderful.
Yeah.
And I was startled. I said, what? Because everything that I have read, on Facebook things and so on, they're always so complimentary. And I said, what are they saying? And she said, you don't want to know. Well, I'm not even familiar with these websites. I've never been on them, so I am in a bubble. But all I can say is that Laura and I were there. I was there from the very first day of the show until 5 months before it went off the air. Laura was there until that last show. We know what happened. And I dare say, ask me a question and I will tell you the truth. I mean, what do you really wonder about? What have you heard?
Well, according to this website, when I was doing some research, because we knew that we were going to be interviewing you, it said that Mark Allen, that basically the reason why he left the series is because he was sexually inappropriate to some of the female cast members. And there was a problem between David and Hennessy where it actually came down to, it was either David Hennessy would leave and they could find another David, or Mark Allen had to leave. And basically it was decided that Mark Allen should leave because
it is absolute, complete nonsense. It is, no. I mean, that is complete nonsense. I knew this guy. I knew this guy really well. He was a California actor, and I think he was living in one of the like Lambs Club or something like that while he was on the show. And I used to get together with him, and we'd sit and run lines because he really did have difficulty with lines. So that is truly salacious and completely incorrect.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that because I hate reading things like that, especially when there's no truth behind it.
Completely incorrect. And now that you've indicated that, I get an idea.
I set the record straight on that for the fans.
Now I get an idea of the kind of thing you're hearing or reading, and I can only tell you that how in the world can these people who weren't, in many cases, even born when we were doing the show, come up with these kinds of stories? Nonsense.
I mean, I won't tell where the website is on live here, but I will send you the website. And when you read it, you'll be like, it's just the way that they've done it. It's like they like reproduce imaginary dialogue between, two people and everything. And they try to substantiate everything. And by the time you read it, it's like, oh, this is kind of bad, really. So I'm glad we put that rumor to rest. So anyone who actually knows this website and got on there, I suggest you highly veto this website and don't take any precedence on what.
Well, no, and I think anybody listening to your broadcast now should know that I've published something like 8 books about Dark Shadows that include behind-the-scenes stories. And I've invited all of the Dark Shadows actors to contribute to these books. Laura has, and George DiCenzo, who is a producer, and Jonathan Frid, so many of the actors. And I've interviewed them because if there was something I wondered about, I would talk to them. So if none of this nonsense has ever cropped up in any of these conversations, I promise you it's not true.
That's terrible. You're unaware, and people are.
Well, sometimes I think people write stuff because it's good clickbait on the web.
Yep, could be. Could be.
So, oh, look, I got another viewer. Someone looking at my rumors. Yay. So basically, Dark Shadows, had some difficulties in this first 13 weeks. And then, of course, the next 13 weeks, viewers started picking up when we had the Phoenix storyline. But then all of a sudden, the ultimate thing happened. And all of a sudden, Dark Shadows takes a big turn with the invention of Barnabas coming into the series. Now, you've got to play Josette, but do you think that the reason why you got to play Josette is because correct me if I'm wrong because this might be a rumor, but basically you were on set one day when you were not supposed to be on set because you were watching what was going on, and you got to play Josette's ghost.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And when people say that we had trouble in the first 13 weeks, I think one has to keep in mind that we were doing a show that was completely different from any of the other daytime shows. They were mostly domestic dramas. One or two took place in a hospital, but otherwise they were contemporary domestic shows. Yeah. Our show took place in a remote Maine village with an eccentric family, and it was more of a Gothic bodice ripper. And it took a while for our show to find its audience. So we give all the credit to Jonathan coming on with his character, because in fact, that is when things took off. But it had really entirely to do with Dan Curtis recognizing he had to do something to save the show from, low audience ratings. And so he really went full whack at Supernatural. And we'd already had two other instances. One, the Schofield character who was the ship's captain who came up dripping seaweed. He was a ghost. And then the little girl. So we'd had two other Supernatural instances on the show prior to Jonathan showing up. I will say that Jonathan, when he arrived on the set, was absolutely fully formed as his character. That's what made the difference, I think. Mm-hmm. Some of us, of course, kind of grew into our characters. Jonathan showed up with the hair, the cane, the cape, the voice. He was Barnabas from the moment he said his first words. And I was there when he said his first words. So I think it was Dan just pulling out the stops, and then having the great good fortune to have Jonathan Frid walk into the role. And I know that there's a certain amount of talk that, oh no, Dan chose the wrong character, that he was away shooting in England and they sent him photos. Right. And he said, oh no, that's not the guy I picked. Well, again, these are just lovely, fun stories, but in fact, Jonathan was our guy. He was handpicked by Dan, and he was wonderful in the role.
He did do a fantastic job. He was such a he suffered through the whole series, and he did it well, Oh, yeah. The remorseful vampire,
Yeah, and I think it's because Jonathan had his own views about that. As a matter of fact, he refused to do the second Dark Shadows feature film because he felt that there was too much violence in it. And I think that he created a character who was very vulnerable. And again, you can't have Bela Lugosi coming into your living room every day.
Right,
He created somebody that was welcome. Mm-hmm. He created somebody that, and of course, since it was a daily show, he had the opportunity to continue to layer that character. So it was quite wonderful.
I have a question, basically, it's kind of like out of left field, but you would do like blocks
in your character, and then your character, for instance, will go to the sanitarium, and then you'd be out of the show for a couple of weeks at a time. What would you do in those times off when you actually weren't recording?
Oh, well, when we went back in time and the storyline changed, there were always those times when actors, were not in the show. I did a couple of plays. I went to Africa for a month with my boyfriend, who was at the time life photographer. I did commercials. I did all kinds of things. Dan was incredibly good about actors. I mean, Joel Crothers did Barefoot in the Park.
Yeah.
On Broadway. He tended to want to work around you, and it couldn't have been better for a young actor just starting a career. It was really helpful, and the fact that we got to play different characters. That story about me being at the studio and not working that day, but watching them create this character of Josette out of a clothes dummy and photographing with a fan on her to kind of animate the hair and the horror makeup, and I just said to the producer and the wardrobe woman, I asked them what they were doing, and they said, well, this is the ghost of Josette. What do you think? And I said, oh, I think it looks like a clothes dummy, and for my smart-ass remark, I got to step into the clothes dummy, but Dan saw that, and he saw how that would work. And I also think I got the role of Josette because one of the first scenes that Jonathan played in the show was in the diner, and when he met Maggie and she met him, it was two outsiders, very much outsiders, finding common ground, and there was a spark between us. And I think Dan saw that. So the two things kind of came together. And I was the first actor on the show who played multiple characters. After that, everybody did. Everybody. And it was wonderful. I played four distinct characters in different time periods. Laura always played a version of her Angelique character, one way or the other, and even Jonathan played versions of his character. Mm-hmm. So, what could be better for a young actor?
Well, that's what made the show, though, too. The diversity that going back into time, and then you had the time period costume and the scenes, and it was just great. I love watching it. The back in time episodes are some of my favorites.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Dan trusted the audience again and again, he would do that. He did it with my wig as Maggie. He did it with the actors playing different roles. He just always felt that people would go with it. Mm-hmm. And they did.
Did you all expect it to become the phenomenon that it did?
Oddly enough, I usually say no, but the truth is that even as we were doing the show, we knew that we were doing something special. I don't know that we expected it to become the cult that it did. That's something that one can't ever imagine. But I always knew that we were doing something different that I was very proud of.
What was your favorite character to play in Dark Shadows? If you had to pick one favorite one.
No, I couldn't pick one. I loved them all, and they were. But I got to play Maggie and Josette the longest, and I played the two of them kind of back and forth sometimes. But they were very different. I liked them both. I liked all of them.
What was it like shooting House of Dark Shadows and shooting the TV show Dark Shadows at the same time?
That was a logistical nightmare, and that was Dan's problem, not mine. There were only two of us who were not in the show while the filming was going on, and that was Jonathan and me. David Selby and Laura Parker held down the fort, so to speak, with Grayson going back and forth and Joan going back and forth. But Jonathan and I was actually in more scenes than anybody. I know we think Jonathan was, but I was actually in more scenes. And I worked almost every day. Jonathan and I were the only two that were not in any of the episodes during the time of filming.
Did you enjoy working in the process of film?
It was new to me. It was brand new because when you're doing a daily soap, there's a survival instinct that takes over. You only get one shot at it, and you couldn't afford to make a mistake. So, in a way, you always had you created a safety net for yourself. And when I was on the very first day of the film, and I saw that we were doing multiple takes, I couldn't believe it. I had never done a film. I had no idea you did what you did. So I remember Dan coming up to me and saying, "You don't have to act your little heart out on the master, okay?" and I finally understood what he was talking about. It was no, I will tell you what I am doing, and you as an actor adjust to it. And I started learning. I started learning from Dan, and Dan, of course, was himself learning. I also had the benefit of working with Joan Bennett so much, and Joan would, whisper every once in a while and give me a little sense of something that I should know, and it was. It was quite extraordinary. I just had the best of all worlds.
When the film came out, was there a grand premiere for you to go to? And
there was, and it was again. I don't think we ever took it as seriously as anybody else did. I remember my boyfriend and I went to I guess it was the premiere. I don't remember my picture being taken or anything. I just remember that we showed up at the theater and it was jammed and we were there. I did do quite a bit of publicity. I was sent out on a little publicity junket thing, and that was kind of fun. But again, I had no idea I was starring in the movie until I saw the movie. Mm-hmm. Never occurred to me that I was starring in a movie. And I think that had to do with Dan, because he created this atmosphere. We were all just kind of putting on a show. We were all doing it together. There was never any sense that of what we were doing.
It was just like business as usual. You were just like doing Dark Shadows, basically.
Exactly. And I remember turning to my boyfriend and saying, "My God, I'm in this a lot." Kind of surprised.
Well, was it quite daunting to see yourself on a big screen?
Oh yeah, it was. And keep in mind, this was in New York, and we were engaged in the TV series immediately after doing the film. There was never, we were completely out of the whole post-production. So the first time any of us saw it was that night at this big theater on Broadway. And I barely remember it. I just remember being kind of shocked that I was on screen so much.
You did it. You were quite present in that movie.
Yeah, it was funny. It was funny. If I'd been in Hollywood, and today actors are just so aware. They're just they brand themselves. They really build up their social media. They do. They're very different than we were when we were pounding the pavement. Right. Resumes and photos in hand, auditioning in somebody's office. There was no such thing as tape or film. Nobody had a reel. I don't know how you got a reel in those days. It was expensive enough having an 8x10.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
So young actors are much more savvy.
Well, they have all this technology now too. I mean, like you said, social media, they have all these platforms, and you know, it's so easy to send a video on your camera phone now. I mean,
we had none of that. We had none of that. If I missed seeing myself in a show because I was rehearsing, I missed it. I don't suppose I saw more than a handful of episodes in the entire time that I was working on Dark Shadows. So I was really kind of unaware of the progression of the show, of what the other plot lines were. I think that I was pretty much unaware that I had such a major role.
The show closed in 1971 with the last episode, and then you moved to Paris, France, and you starred as twins in a French language film called, I'm probably going to
L'Omega.
L'Omega.
Yeah,
That's good.
The other nice. And that was fun, oddly, because I didn't speak French. I was learning French, but I learned the role phonetically. That was fun. And then I did a couple of other films. I moved to England, again with my boyfriend, who was a Time Life photographer. We married. And I did a lot of theater. I worked in the West End with Jimmy Stewart and Harvey. I played Kelly. I worked in rep. I worked at the Bristol Old Vic. I did a lot of BBC, multi-episode things, miniseries, movies of the week, and some really, really fun things that. I think most of my major work was actually done in England.
it looks like I see that you did a film with George C. Scott, The Last Days of Patton.
I did that in England. I did Murrow with Dan Travanti playing Edward R. Murrow's wife, Janet. I did a series called Chandlertown with Powers Booth based on the Raymond Chandler short stories. George C. Scott's mistress in The Last Days of Patton. So I did a lot of work there. And I suppose my career would be very different if I had gone to Hollywood and I'd done the equivalent work in Hollywood. But I didn't, and I have no regrets whatsoever. My time spent in England, more than a decade.
You were very busy in England, it looks like.
Yeah.
Where in London did you live?
I lived right near Hyde Park in a wonderful old 1790s cottage. And one of the other things that I really loved doing was, I worked all over Europe. I mean, I worked in Italy. I remember working in Munich, Barcelona, Rome, Amsterdam. I remember going to Paris and doing Providence with Alain Resnais directing, working with David Warner and Dirk Bogarde. I did a film with John Wayne. I mean, it was just magical. And again, I was not in Hollywood, so I had a totally different concept of career. And I have zero regrets. It's just the way, that was my career.
Well, I have to sit there and say that my friend's mother has a original playbill of you doing Harvey with James Stewart. She went and saw you.
Oh my God, that's great.
She's showing it to me. She goes, "Oh, you're interviewing her." And I said,
Thank you for telling me. It was really a wonderful experience. He's one of the best actors I've ever worked with.
And she said you were wonderful in it. She said that ever since she saw you, that's like every time you would show up on a BBC drama or something like that, she knew who you were, and she would pay attention to it. Because they don't have the history of Dark Shadows in England. They didn't know what it was because it never came over here. So, but yeah, she was a huge fan, and she said you're fantastic.
Oh, isn't that lovely? Well, I will say, it was during the IRA bombings, all of the Irish troubles in London. And Jimmy Stewart was so protective. He would come and fetch me from my dressing room on matinee days. And
that's fantastic.
The two of us would go to the same little wine bar, and we'd have a glass of seltzer and a quiche Lorraine. That was our every week meal. And Saturdays and Wednesdays, and then we'd walk back, and very often we'd find that we had to wait outside. They were, they had cordoned off the theater. They had dog sniffing.
Right.
And but he was so wonderful, and we remained close friends until he died. I'm just terribly fond of him.
For our listeners who don't know, but the Prince of Wales Theatre is actually smack dab in the middle of Leicester, between Leicester Square and Piccadilly Circus. So
yes, it's a huge theater. It seats 1,200.
Yeah,
it was just a huge theater, and we never had an empty seat. I mean, it was completely sold out. And the other wonderful thing is that because Jimmy and I had lunch every matinee day, any of his friends who showed up had lunch with us. So I got to meet Richard Widmark and Rosalind Russell and Henry Fonda. And I'm trying to think of all the people that, came to see Jimmy, and then he'd haul them off to lunch with me.
I'm jealous of Rosalind Russell. I am such a huge fan of hers.
Yeah, but it was just a lovely experience.
Now it looks like you moved to LA in 1978. Did you find that acting in America changed after being away for so long, or did you?
Yeah, it was brand new. I had more culture shock moving to California than I did moving to England, oddly enough. But I was cast in a film with Anthony Quinn and Jacqueline Bisset, and we shot in England, and then I flew to New York, where we finished filming, and then I went out to LA, and my agent put me up for a pilot, which I got. It was with Tom Selleck. I've done 2 pilots and several episodes, Magnum PI and various things with Tom. He's, again, I put him in the category with Jimmy Stewart, one of the nicest, best actors. I just adore him. And I did that pilot and went back to England. And then my agent called and said that there was another pilot. Oh, I know. I came back to do a thing with Dan Curtis, a movie of the week. And then I did another pilot and another pilot. And finally, the one that really took off was with Brian Dennehy, Big Seamus, Little Seamus. And I think I kept, the house in England, in London, for another 20 years. And I kept going back there and working. But from that point on, I had one foot in both London and LA.
Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
I have a bunch of favorite movies. I watch them all on Shudder.com for only $4.99 a month.
That's a scary low price.
But if I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be Scream.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the only streaming service that lets me watch hundreds of horror movies on demand.
I'll be right back.
Hello? Hello? Hello, are you gonna subscribe? Hello?
Go to Shudder.com to subscribe, if you dare.
Hello, welcome back to Literary License Podcast, and we want to thank Catherine Lee Scott for part 1 of our interview. She is an amazing actress, an amazing writer, and the next episode of our podcast, we'll be going more in depth of her writing career and what she's been up to since.
Yep, she's
So
great.
let's go into tune in next. Let's go into Morning Has Broken. And Tom, what are your final thoughts of these first 25 episodes of Dark Shadows?
Finding their niche, which any new endeavor like this would be expected. That once again, a lot of good tools to work with. The signature music, the complex characterizations, the sense of humor injected into a couple of the characters, Burke and Roger, the film sequences, which were a first for soap operas, right away, and basically good acting performances in general by all of them. They were not playing this as a satire. This was not camp. This was serious stuff, and they went out of their way to emote. These actors had Broadway and stage backgrounds, in addition to Joan Bennett's movie background, and they were all able to put it together. And considering Alexandra Mulkey's first job out of acting school, and what a tremendous performance she gave, even especially since she was nearsighted, and the poor thing really had to memorize her lines. Otherwise, I don't even think she could see the teleprompter. But she did a tremendous job. David Hennessy, tremendous job, and chemistry was starting to occur. And it's gradual because the plot is slower, and it's a Gothic romance. There are very little Gothic horror elements, and you hear a little bit about the ghosts, but that's it. But they are dealing with the problems of the rich family and the conflicts within each other, and the past that they want to keep secret from each other, and their fear of the present, the past influencing the present, and how it's going to impact the future. So that's those are my thoughts on it. Vickie, it's Keith. Keith, there you are.
Yeah. No, and what about yourself, Theresa? What did you find the last?
Well, I remember watching it when I was a child and running home from grade school, like so many others. But in hindsight, I really liked the production values. They did a lot with a little bit, and the very limited budget, very limited visual effects. But I liked the way the characters developed and were launched. But one of the things that drove everybody crazy was a cliffhanger. And as a writer, that is what gave me my love of cliffhangers and the development step by step in a logical, concise manner. They did in a half hour. They packed in a lot. And these days, they've got an hour show and they spread everything out and draw things out. So I really like the characters. I like the production values.
It's even more to their credit because with the commercials, it was a half hour, but the actual running time was 22 minutes.
Right.
So it really is to their credit that they were able to pack in as much as they did. I agree with you.
And what about yourself, Vickie? What are your final thoughts on the first 25 episodes of Dark Shadows?
I believe that it laid the groundwork and for the whatever was to come, which we can't speak about, and the others like He Who Has No Name and everything else.
But we will.
I mean, like I said, if new people are starting to watch this, really hang in there because it does start, making sense and things start coming together. And, I just can't say enough about it because I've been a fan since I was little. Like I said, I used to have to sneak watching it with my brothers because my mother didn't like it. So, and there was just so many, there's just so much to love about it. I mean, it's hard to compact even just a synopsis into 4 or 5 sentences because there is so much material there. So, I mean, just hang in there, people and fans, and watch it and enjoy because it's so worth it. You'll get so hooked, just like the rest of us.
Like they say in New York, where I come from, try it, you'll like it.
Exactly.
And for my final thoughts on the first 25 episodes, I think that I enjoyed it for the most part. I'm glad that in the middle, after the first 3 weeks, after the first 15 episodes, from episode 16 to episode 25, we do see a turn. And for me, that's when actually the show starts gaining it. But I think it's very imperative that people are going to enjoy Dark Shadows as a whole for all the 2,100 and some odd episodes, that they need to start from the beginning to see how everything turns out. And I have to say that my interest is very much piqued. I very much enjoyed it. I wasn't quite bored. I tend to watch these episodes while I'm in the bath, so it's a good because I have to sit there for an hour, so I get to watch 3 episodes in an hour. So yeah, but other than that, I think it's fantastic. And remember that it's also available on Amazon Prime, and the DVD box set, the Coffin box set, is being re-released for sale. So people have $531 to spend on that. Price. So Theresa, before we say goodbye, why don't you tell our guests and our listeners where they can find you?
Okay, I'm available on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. You look me up, Theresa Chase. And also, if you want to, keep up with my progress with Chalice Island, it's also got a page, and I would love people to go there and like it and share it, because I've got an investor who's interested, who believes that the brand has been damaged and there isn't an audience, and I believe there is. Especially if you get as many of the original actors and combine them with new talent to create a new series in the same genre with the same suspense, horror, romance, and cliffhangers.
I'm just going to speak briefly. I don't believe the brand has been permanently damaged.
Oh, I agree.
That your investors should be aware of. Yes, there was a temporary setback, unfortunately, as a result of the 2012 movie, in my humble opinion. Not all the fans disagree with that. A majority of, I'm not even going to go there. But the bottom line is that there is still a good, strong fan base. Not just the people who were around when we originally watched it, but their kids and grandchildren. And I saw something on Facebook the other day, 5 generations of a family into Dark Shadows. That was incredible. And also the audio dramas, which is Another World on MPI. That is keeping and a lot of people, and that was great that they kept doing that.
Right.
The stars lent their audio talents to those podcasts, and a number of them are actually sequels to plot lines from the original show that were never resolved. So with all that, there is a positive, strong fan base, Facebook as well as Yahoo. And of course, our listeners, which Keith can address, and I think it's still there.
So I'm asking everybody to go to Facebook and look up Chalice Island, and then like the page and share it, and asking people to do it as well. I would like to get 100,000 or more likes, because it would prove that there is still the fan base.
We will include those links. We'll include those links in our show notes, which you'll find on our podcast and on our website and through SoundCloud and on various other sites that you can find us on. And we'll make sure that we do share that on our newsletter. So if you sign up with our newsletter, we will have those links onto our newsletter, so you can make sure that you like and share Chalice Island, and see if we can make this happen for you.
Thank you.
And if you do want to follow the Literary License Podcast, we are found at www.llpodcast.com, and you can find us on Facebook, Reddit, Tumblr, LinkedIn, Twitter, and various other social medias. And of course, you can now listen to us on our new YouTube channel, and we'd like to thank all our listeners on YouTube for making that a success for us. And
if we've forgotten any platform, please let us know.
The free internet radio stations, as I recall, you're on free internet radio stations, Keith?
Yes, we're on PowerCast 98.9. We're also on Intune Radio, and we're also on Cloud Radio. And just remember, people who own an Alexa's Echo, if you say, Alexa, play the Literary License Podcast, they will play you Fantastic.
Wow.
So that will bring us to next week. Next week, we'll be doing Strangers on the Train, the book by Patricia Highsmith and the Alfred Hitchcock classic with our special guest, writer, director, and producer, Dave Campfield. So our Dark Shadows will be coming once a month. And of course, on some months, we'll have 2 episodes. So for our next podcast, which we'll be doing Dark Shadows, will be at the end of August. And we'll ask these important questions. Will David go to jail? Will Vickie find out who her parents are? Will Caroline get her kicks with Burke Devlin? How long will Roger Bandage stay on his eye? And will Burke, someone asked Burke, why the long face? So these questions and more may be answered or maybe not in our next episode of Dark Shadows, which will be covering episodes 26 to 48. So I'd like to say goodbye, Theresa. Say goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Say goodbye, Tom.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Great to to be with you again. Take care.
Say goodbye, Vickie.
Goodbye, everybody.
And goodbye from myself. And we'll see you next week with our episode of Strangers on the Train.
My name is Victoria Winters. The tension at Collinwood had almost made me forget the purpose for which I'd come. But now a letter has arrived. A letter that once again has raised a specter of my past. A letter that intrudes upon the present and heightens the growing fears of a 9-year-old boy.
He's going to die. He's going to die. He's going to die. He's going to die.
Right to the tracks and the train's just coming. Strapped to the wings, the engine running. You say that this wasn't in your plan. Don't mess around with the demolition man. Tied to the chair and the bomb is ticking. This situation was not of your picking. You say that this wasn't in your plan. Don't mess around with the demolition man. I'm a walking nightmare and nothing but a fool. I feel conversation as I walk into the room. I'm a freelance bitch. I'm the sort of music man. I'm a walking disaster. I'm a demolition man.
Hello. This is Mrs. Stoddard. What? Where did it happen? Is he all right? I see. Yes, thank you. What happened? Oh, Roger's been in a car accident. His car went off the road.
Is he badly hurt?
They don't know yet. I knew it. I knew it.
Nightmare and nothing but a fool. I feel conversation as I walk into the room. I'm a freelance bitch. I'm the sort of music man. I'm a walking disaster. I'm a demolition man.
Maybe it's just as important to me as those magazines are to you. These. You learn a lot from them, don't you, David? How to fix things, break them, put things together, and take them apart. Well, sure. David, why were you so afraid of the sheriff? You thought he'd come here to arrest you, didn't you? Why should he? I didn't do anything. Then why are you always talking about going to jail?
You come to me like a moth to the flame. It's love you need, but I don't play that game. You kept on coming. You should have ran.
No reason. I'm going to have a talk with that sheriff.
Mr. Collins, we're not through with our talk.
Miss Winters, forget about that letter. Tear it up, throw it away. Just forget about it. Forget about it. Forget about it.